Hello, and welcome to our Train the Trainer on Turning Dreams into Degrees Education Course 1, which is focused on supporting foster youth through early college awareness and preparation. Thanks for joining. My name is Jessica Petros. I'm our Associate Director of Education here at John Burton Advocates for Youth, and I'm joined by my colleague, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Megan Maddock. I'm a project manager here at JBay, and it's nice to be here with all of you.
So our training for today is a train the trainer. So this is not intended to be a training for a caregiver to take directly today. This is to prepare our facilitators who will be providing this training to caregivers. And if we go to the next slide, this training is really designed to support caregivers throughout California who are working with foster youth in grades 6 through 10. And when we say caregiver, we're really referring to all different types of caregivers across different settings. So whether you're providing this training to resource families, to foster family agency staff or STRTP staff, this would be applicable to any of those groups. And it can be provided either in person or virtually. And this training is part of a two-part series. So as I mentioned, this is for those with caregivers in 6th through 10th grade. But there's also a companion course to this for those serving caregivers who are working with older youth in 11th and 12th grade. And the link to that training is also on the slide. There is some duplicative content in both of the courses, starting off with some foundational introductory information, but there's also some, differences in these two trainings, with the second course being much more technical in nature. Go to the next slide. So all of our materials can be found on our website. We have the link posted there, and we have a variety of materials developed to assist trainers doing this training. This includes, of course, PowerPoint slides that are available in English and Spanish with very detailed trainer's notes, pretty much scripting the entire training, as well as embedded engagement opportunities for instructors that can be designed, depending on how you do the training. There's instructions on how to do those engagement opportunities, either in person or virtually. We also have a trainer's guide with instructions, more additional information, background context on the information in the training, trainer's notes. We also have considerations for those facilitating this in person or online, suggested pacing and timing, details for those doing the training either locally here, I'm in LA, locally here in LA County or throughout the state, and further information of that nature. As I mentioned before, this training can be done either in person or virtually, and it's designed to be 3 hours in nature. And you'll find instructions on how to do that throughout the trainer's notes and the trainer's guide as well. And as we go through the training today, we'll talk about how to do some of those interaction opportunities. We won't necessarily demo all of them, but we'll give you some background and context on how to do that for your audience as well. And then also we have caregiver supporting materials. So as we go through the training, you'll see that there's a link when you're doing the training that you provide to caregivers with various handouts and guides that's for their reference. So you can provide that to them, and that can be their companion materials as they're doing the training. And you can either think about, getting those materials printed or provided to them electronically as well. What we also have, and I forgot to mention too, is, today we're doing more of an in-depth train the trainer for any new facilitators, but for any returning facilitators, sometimes things change in the law with legislation. So every year we're also updating this training. And so we also have on the website a 1 hour shorter version, Train the Trainer, for any returning facilitators that highlights just kind of the updates that we make to the training along the way, as things are always kind of changing in the world of higher education and child welfare. So here's an overview of the various caregiver supporting materials. One of the big things that we've developed to support this material, support this training, is the Foster Youth Post-Secondary Educational Planning Guide. And you'll discuss this guide with the attendees that are taking the training. But this really is a companion to both of these trainings, Ed Course 1 and Ed Course 2. And there's two versions. We have one version for adults serving youth in middle school through high school, And we also have youth-facing versions for our high school students in 9th to 11th and also 12th grade. And these guides are available in English and Spanish and really complement everything we're discussing today, and in some cases provides even more detailed information than we provide in the training. We also have financial aid guides, which isn't as relevant for this audience since we're working with younger youth, but it's great to make sure that they have that information as they start to have youth that move into the older grades where they have to actually start applying for financial aid in 12th grade. There's also a foster youth education law fact sheet. This has been developed by the California Foster Youth Education Task Force, and it's another handy reference guide for all K-12 education laws. We also have developed our own foster youth benefits eligibility chart. This is a common question that we get often from caregivers is what are our youth eligible for, depending on the time that they were in care, depending on when they get adopted. So this handout also, provides an overview of all the different benefits that they can receive depending on their time in care. And we also have career planning guides developed by some of our partners with the LA Opportunities Collaborative. And for anyone that may have been familiar with the training in the past, we had a lot of companion handouts, but those materials have essentially all been integrated into the new post-secondary education planning guide. But if anyone still wants to see those handouts, they're still on our website and you can see those materials as well. So here we have an overview of the training breakdown and timing. So, this again is supposed to be a 3-hour long training that includes time for a 10-minute break and time for up to 10 minutes of Q&A. And this overview, no need to, memorize it right now, but it's also in that companion trainer's guide that I mentioned. Now, most caregivers, they're either going to be taking Education Course 1 or Education Course 2. And as I mentioned before, there is some overlap in some of the introductory content in both courses. So for anyone that might be providing both trainings to folks, we do have information in the trainer's guide to let you know where there's overlap in the training. So if you're trying to provide both trainings to individuals, you can remove the duplicative information. There's videos embedded in the course as well as interactive opportunities. This is all accounted for in that 3-hour time frame. And so, as the trainer, we're assuming that you're going to include those interactive opportunities as well to keep the audience engaged. Next slide. Now we know we have facilitators doing this training throughout the state. So there are a few slides where we put some kind of general information with the intention that you as the facilitator, we would recommend that you update those slides with the information for your local context for your county. So this is again in the trainer's guide, but wanting to flag it for you. One of the slides in this course, slide 65, talks about our County Office of Education Foster Youth Services Coordinating Program. Right now, the language we have on the slide is very broad, but again, we encourage you to update it with your local program's contact information and any nuances about that program since it can vary county to county. For our LA County facilitators, which we know we have many, there's also a handout we created just for them on some very specific LA County resources, including some nonprofits in the area that can also be a nice resource for caregivers. And then there's also a slide on the independent living program, which right now, again, is written very broadly, but we encourage you to update that with the contact information for your local independent living program, since there can, again, be variation county to county. And we want to make sure that caregivers know who to reach out to, the best number, website, whatever the contact information is. So I want to give you just some broad training tips if you're doing this training. We encourage you to really practice in advance. As I said, the PowerPoints, there's detailed notes, detailed instructions. It's essentially scripted for you, but it's a lot of content. And we encourage you to look at it in advance, familiarize yourself with it, practice the information. I think the audience will definitely be bored if they can tell that you're reading the script word for word. So to the extent that you can feel familiar with it, put it in your own words, have it seem more like a conversation than you reading every word in a script, then I think they'll be more engaged as an attendee in the training. Because it's also so long. We really encourage you to have more than one trainer. I think on one hand, it's going to be helpful, particularly if you're doing this virtually, to have another co-facilitator to help with the technical aspects. So someone can be managing the chat, launching the videos, helping with some of that breakout rooms, those tech aspects. But also it's going to provide some variation for the attendees to hear more than one voice and just instead of, one voice for 3 hours. There's also a lot of videos in this training of youth who have had experience in foster care talking about their experience. So we encourage you to preload those videos. They're on YouTube. Get them all queued up. Sometimes there's ads in the beginning, so you can kind of skip that and have them ready to go. Also wanted to share with you, this training is also now available on Foster Parent College, which if you're not familiar is an online training website for caregivers, actually nationwide, and caregivers here in California can actually take these trainings for free. So this course, Education Course 2, is available on their website in English and now in Spanish. It's called Preparing Teens for Post-Secondary Education, Part 1, but it's the same training, just formatted for their online platform. And also to share that Education Course 2 will also be made available in English and ultimately Spanish on their website. It's not yet there, but will be coming soon, sometime in 2024. So everything I just went over, those are some introductory train the trainer slides, but the slides you're seeing now and all the rest of the slides are the actual slide deck for this training. So what I'm going to do, and Megan as well, is we're going to walk through the training so you can hear it, get familiar with it. And then when we get to the interactive opportunities, we'll kind of pause, explain how to facilitate them, and then you can, do those on your own when you're doing the training. So just to let you know, this training was created by us here at John Byrne Advocates for Youth, along with our partners at Unite LA, and through support with the foster and kinship care education programs in LA County, who provided input, along with our LA County Department of Children and Family Services, Foster Parent College, and the LA Opportunity Youth Collaborative. So here's an overview about what we're going to be covering in our training today. And again, this is for caregivers with youth in middle school or even early high school grades. And a lot of times higher education can seem so far into the future that a lot of times it can take secondary importance. So what might feel like more immediate concerns in the moment. But for youth to really succeed in post-secondary education, they need that encouragement and they need the planning process to start early on. And we think, and why this training exists, is that caregivers have a really critical role that they can play. And they can do that starting early on. Middle school is ideal. It's a great time to begin these conversations. So this course is going to provide caregivers with any tools and information to help their youth achieve their higher education, then the higher education that they need to really turn those dreams and those goals that they have into degrees. So after the course today, you'll be able to explain the benefits of post-secondary education, recognize the unique barriers foster youth face, which includes the impact of trauma, identify strategies to create a college-going culture in the home, really be able to understand the different post-secondary education pathways that are out there, and then identify resources and strategies to help students be able to explore their career interests and achieve their post-secondary educational goals. And lastly, we'll be covering some of those key educational planning milestones in 6th through 10th grade. And this is for all caregivers. So regardless of your own level of education, your own experience with college, it's okay if this is all new to you, or maybe it's just been a really long time since you've been in college yourself. This course is right for you. So as I mentioned earlier, all of our materials for our caregivers can be found in this link. And as the trainer, you can either print some of these materials or put the link in the chat for the caregivers, which includes the materials that we went through with the post-secondary education planning guide and many others. Next slide. And here's some more information about the post-secondary educational planning guide that we discussed earlier. And as you know, as the facilitator, here's where you'll go through and kind of explain what this guide is, what it includes, and that it's a companion resource to this training. So I've been mentioning the term post-secondary education a lot. And one thing we did want to first do is define what does that mean? And post-secondary education, or sometimes just referred to as higher education, it's really any formal education that happens after high school. So this could include apprenticeships, trade school, career and technical education, community college, or what maybe is more commonly known as your traditional four-year college or university. So we're going to talk more about all these different types of post-secondary education in this course, and we'll sometimes use the terms interchangeably. We might say post-secondary ed, higher education, or college. But we do want to be clear that as we're referring to those terms, that we're really talking about all of those different pathways that are available after high school. So this is going to be an interaction opportunity that you can use with your audience. And what you'll do as the facilitator, whether you're in person or virtually, is ask them as kind of an opportunity to say, hey, do you think any of these individuals are former foster youth? And show them one by one. And this is where they can guess to think if these people do have experience in the foster care system. And spoiler alert, they all do have experience in the foster care system. And, if you're doing this in person, you can have them raise their hand, just to get them to participate. If you're doing it via Zoom, it's kind of up to you depending on your audience size. You can have them do the little thumbs up or type in the chat, get the yes, no reactions. You could use those too. So then after they go through all that and they guess, who they think is and isn't, you can go to the next slide and let them know that actually all of those individuals did have some involvement in the foster care system. And we do this activity to really show that despite the challenges that a lot of youth in foster care face, that attending college and building a successful future is really possible. And the training that we're going to have today is going to help equip you, the caregiver, with the skills and resources that you need to support your youth and help them reach those dreams. And the picture that we actually have on the slide is of some students and staff from the Guardian Scholars Program at UCLA. But I know many of our facilitators also work at colleges. So if you have any pictures from your foster youth support program at your college campus, this could be a great opportunity. Put pictures of them on here too to show, look, this is possible. Here's youth from our community going to college or succeeding in college. So at this point, we transition to a video of youth with lived experience in the foster care system. And as I mentioned before, we have several videos embedded throughout the training. We're not going to play all of those for the Train the Trainer, but I did want to show you one of them just to get a feel for it. And again, we also have these available in Spanish for the Spanish version of this training.
Hello, I'm Brici Gutierrez. I'm 23 years old. I was in foster care for 11 years. My siblings and I were very fortunate to be placed with my grandparents when we first entered. I went to CSULB for 4.5 years. I graduated with 2 bachelors in political science and psychology and a minor in women's gender and sexuality studies.
Hello, my name is Emerald Evans. I am 21 years old and I was raised in foster care from the age of 5 to 18, and then I transitioned to extended foster care from 18 to 21. I was in about 10 different placements. Within those placements, I was in group homes, I was in extended family and family, and I was also in non-relative placements. Now I currently attend the California State University of Sacramento. I am pursuing my bachelor's degree in criminal justice in hopes to then pursue my JD in law school to become an attorney for foster youth.
Hi, my name is Roshan Davis. I'm 29 years old. I was born and raised in the foster care system. I was born with crack cocaine in my system. I was taken away from my mother at birth and placed under the care of my maternal grandmother until she passed away. I was 5 years old. Upon her death, I bounced around from foster home to foster home. By the age of 13, I had 4 different foster families. By the age of 14, I became a juvenile delinquent. I'm a current student at California State University, Los Angeles, working on my BS in psychology. My educational journey started in September of 2012 at Pasadena City College. I graduated in May 2016 as a triple major with an AA in psychology, an AA in sociology, and an AA in communications. My career goal is to become an IOP, an industrial organizational psychologist.
Hey, how's it going, folks? My name is Philip Angelo Mamaro. I'm 24 years old, and I lived in foster care for about 2 years, and I was lucky enough to only have lived with one foster family throughout that whole time. Right now, my story is a little bit different because I'm not in college. I'm in a program called Year Up in San Francisco. And the coolest part about this program is that for 6 months, they would teach you technical skills, and then for another 6 months, they would partner you with a Fortune 500 company for an internship. And I'm personally really excited for that.
Hi, my name's Hannah, and I'm here to share.
Anna's not part of the youth video. So there, that's one of the videos. And again, there's many more embedded throughout the training. We'll just show that one for today. But it's an opportunity for them to hear directly from youth with lived experience. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Megan, to talk to us about the benefits of post-secondary education.
Yeah, so we just heard from our youth, and we are going to be talking about why higher education is so important. So simply put, the investment you make to pursue a college degree pays off in terms of future earnings. So you can see on the screen here that the average annual salary of someone with just a high school diploma is about $44,000 compared to about $74,000 for someone with a four-year degree or a bachelor's degree. So that's a pretty significant difference. And when you add it up over the course of one's lifetime, the difference in earnings can equal to $1 million more, which is not insignificant for our young people. And having a higher education degree pays off in other ways. So you saw from the last slide that college graduates earn more on average, but they also have greater job stability and lower rates of unemployment. And that is key to ensuring our youth have economic security well into their future. Nationally, 70% of all jobs require post-secondary education. So it's still critically important that our young people go on to some form of post-secondary education. On the flip side, there's also fewer options for those without college degrees and more competition for jobs that pay less and have less security. So investing in that college degree is a great deal for our young people and again, kind of helps them achieve that stability in their future. A college degree is also associated with other forms of well-being and positive life outcomes, such as improved health, increased volunteering, increased civic engagement like voting, and lower rates of incarceration. And there's also a greater likelihood of one's own children attending college in the future. So the goal isn't just about getting foster youth a job, but helping them to achieve meaningful careers and become self-actualized adults. So it's beyond self-sufficiency and recognizing that higher education is a key part of achieving well-being, not just for them now, but for the future as well. So while we know the benefits of post-secondary education, how do our youth feel about it? And this is a slide where there is an interaction capability. So you have the questions up here, and we'll pull up the stats one by one, the answers to those questions, and you can engage with your audience by either asking them to respond by kind of shouting it out or putting it in the Zoom chat if it's virtual, or you can create a poll in Zoom and have people guess what they think is most likely to be the answer. So let's go through the answers. What percentage of youth do you think want to go to college? So the answer is most youth in care do. So about 91% of youth in California report that they want to go to college and understand that college is desirable. And while this is positive, aspiring to go to college and making it through to that degree are two different things, which we'll explore in that second question, in which percent of youth go on to enroll in college. And the answer is 52% of youth in California who graduate from high school enroll in post-secondary education within 1 year after they graduate. So while most youth who experience foster care want to go to college, the reality is that many face barriers and obstacles that need to be overcome before they actually get to that place of enrollment. And lastly, what percentage of youth who experience foster care do you think achieve a college degree by the age of 23? So in this case, the answer is 10%. So you can see that this number is low, but it has been increasing. And although youth in the care often get labeled as not college material or not college ready, these negative labels are due to a range of unique barriers and challenges that the youth may face, and not necessarily due to the fault of their own. So we're going to talk more about these challenges in the next section and what caregivers can do to improve these outcomes. So here's another engagement opportunity with your audience. So this is a great time to have caregivers reflect on their own perception of college and any external messages and information that they have about this journey. So it's important for caregivers to reflect on this because the youth will be informed by the message that they're getting from caregivers, their family and friends, their teachers and counselors. So this is a great opportunity for caregivers to share about that. And depending on the format of your training, whether it's in person or Zoom, you can have folks share with each other or in a breakout room or in the larger kind of Zoom room. If you're in person, you can use something visual like a Post-it collage to help caregivers kind of share their feelings about college. All right, so we have another video, and we're not going to click on this link this time, but in this video, you'll hear youth share about their inner feelings regarding attending college when they were in middle school and high school, just to kind of help caregivers continue to reflect on that messaging from the last slide. And the youth will share a little bit about, how sometimes they didn't feel like they were college material and not interested in attending college, but many of them were able to go on to achieve post-secondary education success. All right, so as mentioned before, many of our youth face unique barriers that are linked with poor academic outcomes. And so in this section, we'll take some time to better understand what these barriers are and how we can support the young people in our care who may be experiencing these obstacles. So first, what we'll do in the next section is a number of short scenarios about youth in care and their educational aspirations. And with the audience, the job is going to be to determine whether each youth is experiencing a challenge to their post-secondary education. So the next section of slides will be an interaction opportunity for your audience. And again, you can do this in however way it works for your folks, whether it's having folks raise their hand and share in person or on Zoom or in breakout groups, whatever makes sense to you. So scenario one, Elijah is a youth who has experienced several school changes while in care. Could this present a challenge to his college success? Yes, so changing schools is a challenge for any youth, and frequent school changes is one of the biggest challenges a youth in care can face in achieving academic success. You probably have already experienced this, some of the caregivers, in that school changes can lead to youth falling behind in the core studies necessary for college, such as math and English, and receiving only partial credit for a course. It can also disrupt forming or keeping supportive relationships with people like teachers, peers, and school counselors, those folks that help them on their education journey. So a tip here for caregivers is that given the impact of changing schools, caregivers can really play an important role in advocating for students to stay in their school of origin, especially if they change placements and it's determined to be in their best interest. So unless other arrangements are specified in the Needs and Services Plan or Transitional Independent Living Plan, a provider can ensure transportation is provided to that school of origin so they can stay in the school that makes most sense for them. And caregivers can learn more about these education rights at the link in those supporting materials that we talked about at the beginning of this training. Scenario 2, Ashley is a sophomore at a local high school. She wants to become a graphic designer. However, because of her recent suspension and low grades, her caregivers doubt she'll be able to go or to succeed in college. Might the attitude of her caregivers present a challenge to her college success? The answer is yes. Ashley's caregivers have labeled her as not college ready or not college material. And when this happens with youth, they're not given the support and information they need to attend college and succeed. And as we'll see later in this presentation, low high school grades or GPA should not deter Ashley from attending her local community college and potentially moving on to transfer to a four-year college from there. In California, for example, there's no minimum GPA requirement to attend a community college. Scenario number 3. Nicholas, who is doing very well in high school, has been in care most of his life, and his caregivers know that he can't afford to pay for college. Does a lack of finances mean that Nicholas shouldn't go to college? The answer is no. While it's true that many families struggle to pay for post-secondary education for their youth, lack of finances is not shouldn't be an issue for most youth in care. As we'll discuss later on, most youth in care actually qualify for a lot of financial aid, and this aid is often gift aid, meaning it does not need to be repaid. Even students who are low income can attend college. However, Nicholas should plan ahead to access these financial aid resources. Scenario number 4. Rachel is 17 and has lived with multiple resource families. However, she has not developed a relationship with her current family members. She's determined to go to college to study accounting and has been searching online for degree programs. Could Rachel's lack of relationship with her current resource parents present a challenge to her college success? Probably yes. While Rachel is to be commended for her commitment and self-determination, when youth like Rachel lack educational guidance and support, it can pose unique challenges. Youth do best when they have adults in their life who can help them do such things as identify those available resources, helping to fill out applications, and applying for financial aid. Foster youth often lack this essential information and guidance, and that's why it's key for caregivers to step in and support young people in that journey. Scenario number 5. Throughout her life, Irene was exposed to domestic violence and neglect. Now, as an 8th grader, her resource parents are supporting her therapy as she deals with the after effects of her trauma. Could complex trauma present a challenge to her college success? Probably yes. Like Irene, youth in care often suffer from complex trauma, and this can negatively impact their behavior, including their performance in school and their self-esteem. This impact of complex trauma can also carry through a youth's life, including once they become involved in post-secondary education. We'll talk more about this in the next section and share tips that caregivers can utilize to address this trauma and best support youth. Scenario number 6. Devin is a 7th grader diagnosed with dyslexia. Devin is an exceptionally clear thinker, but his reading ability is way below his grade level. He's currently receiving special education services, and with the help of these services, he's getting B's and C's in his classes. Devin wants to be a mechanical engineer and design electric cars. Will Devin's learning disability prevent him from achieving a post-secondary education? No. So Devin's disability should not prevent him from obtaining a post-secondary education. There are many supportive services, including technology support for colleges with disabilities like dyslexia. Devin's caregivers seem to be already doing a great job of gaining support for him while in middle school, and they could assist further by helping him to research the disability supports that are offered at the colleges that he's interested in. For youth in care who may experience emotional, physical, or learning disabilities, there are a wide variety of vocational and educational resources available to these youth. All right, so attending college or other post-secondary education can be a challenge for any person. And as we mentioned in some of those vignettes, it can be especially true for youth who are dealing with complex trauma. So there are many ways that trauma can impact a youth's educational performance, and every child, as we know, is unique. But we'll talk about in the next section some common examples of how trauma can affect behavior at home or in the classroom. So children of youth of any age who have experienced complex trauma often have difficulties sleeping, including suffering from night terrors or nightmares. This could mean that they're tired in the classroom, and they may also struggle with changes to their diet as they move from family to family. And these challenges to both basic needs in sleep and nutrition can have a serious impact on their school performance. Children who have experienced trauma can also have behavioral issues such as anger outbursts in the classroom, irritability, or absenteeism. The trauma may also impact a child's ability to focus or concentrate. It may also result in young people being emotionally numb or over or under reacting to things in their environment. Children who are traumatized often have difficulty with authority, redirection, or criticism. And lastly, the impact of their trauma may impact their ability to form trusting relationships with adults. And as we know, adults can be really key to a young person's success in education. So all of these impacts of trauma can impact a young person's schooling and the impact and the level of support adults they may need from adults. So sometimes it can be hard to distinguish between the impact of trauma and other mental health disorders or learning disabilities. So we want to encourage caregivers to work with the child's social worker and school to get evaluated by a professional to determine if an individualized education plan or IEP is needed. So IEPs can provide those special education services to the student and also provide them with special protections under the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. It's important to remember, though, that even though youth who have experienced trauma or have an IEP, they are just as capable as other youth of being successful in higher education. However, caregivers need to be aware that having an IEP or a disability can come with a stigma that some teachers, social workers, or even youth may hold about themselves. And this negative attitude and stigma can result in youth not feeling challenged or even supported to their full potential. And this stigma can carry through a child's schooling. Labeling, again, we talked about earlier in this presentation, as labeling the child as not college material or unmotivated or difficult when these behaviors are actually a result of the trauma that they've experienced. So again, even though a youth has experienced trauma or has an IEP, college is still very possible for them. Trauma can also impact a child's values, beliefs, feelings, thoughts, and expectations, not only about themselves, but also about the adults who care for them and the world around them. And as we know, the impact and the effects of trauma are often not visible. We will see a child's behavior and tend to forget about what might be causing that behavior below the surface. And remember that caregivers who use a trauma-informed approach will recognize that a youth's behavior is an after effect of the trauma that they have experienced and is often a clue to a child's underlying beliefs, attitudes, and feelings. So it's a good reminder for us all that when it comes to challenging school behavior, it's much more effective to ask yourself what happened to the child rather than to ask what's wrong with the child. Each youth's experience and identity is unique and multifaceted. In addition to the many traumas associated with the foster care system, many of our youth face systemic barriers and institutionalized racism that impacts their ability to achieve their ambition. It's important to remember that there are a disproportionate number of Black youth in the foster care system due to systemic factors and racism. And many foster youth have trauma related not just to their experience that brought them into care, but to the racism themselves, even within educational systems. An example of this kind of disparity and discrimination is that in 2014, it was found that only 18% of the nation's public schools students are Black, but an estimated 40% of all students expelled from U.S. schools are Black, which makes Black students over 3 times more likely to be suspended or expelled than their white peers. We call this the racial discipline gap, and research has shown that racial bias plays a clear role in the disproportionate number of suspensions among Black students, even controlling for other factors. So racial bias not only leads to harsher disciplinary issues, but these students are also less likely to be identified as gifted or have access to quality education and teachers, and they're more likely to be suspended than students of other races. And we know that the impact of this starts early, even in kind of preschool or early education settings. So racism is not always overt or even within our conscious knowledge. We all hold implicit biases, which is having an attitude towards people or associating stereotypes with them without our conscious knowledge. And sometimes these implicit biases may even be about race. And we have embedded in this slide a short video to watch that helps caregivers understand a little bit more about implicit bias and what that looks like. And since it is so important for caregivers to be aware of the impact of racism on youth of color and take the time to explore their own biases, we have a link at the bottom of the slide here where caregivers on their own time can go and take the implicit association test at Harvard, which tells them a little bit more about what may be coming up for caregivers. So again, kind of keeping in mind the role of trauma and how that might impact a student's belief about themselves, their education, their future. We have another interactive opportunity on this slide with the invisible backpack. So in this case, we have a youth who's saying, I don't want to go to college. And to help understand all of the kind of stigmas and negative beliefs a youth may be carrying, you can encourage the audience to share what might be motivating a youth to say, I don't want to go to college. And so you can do this again in person or in the Zoom chat or through breakout rooms, and allow them to share kind of feelings that come up for them. And so as you move through the PowerPoint, some of those motivations and underlying feelings will be shared on the screen, and you can discuss this with caregivers. And to continue to talk about kind of the challenges and kind of negative stigmas of youth in care, we'll have another video at this point where we'll hear directly from some of those youth about the challenges that they've experienced. And so in this next section, we'll talk specifically about how caregivers can make a difference. And I think it's good news is that even though youth who have experienced foster care and the challenges that we talked about in the last section, many of our young people are still very resilient and strong, and it can still help carry them through their post-secondary journey. So one of the key things for caregivers to take away is that the single most important factor influencing a positive outcome for children and youth is a lasting relationship with a caring, engaged adult. And there's tons of research out there that supports this. And for youth who, especially for youth in foster care, they may not have had this caring, engaged adult in their life. And it's important for caregivers to understand that they could be the person who inspires them to see themselves in college and someone who can support them in the post-secondary education planning process. Caregivers also can know that they can be connected to someone like a mentor who can also assist them in this process. But the key takeaway is that caregivers are so important in their day-to-day interactions with youth, that they can send positive messages about them, motivate them, especially as they're undertaking their educational journey, and be that key person to connect them to resources, supports, and other people to help them on that journey. So one way to continue to support youth and to be that engaged, caring adult is to use a trauma-informed parenting approach. So one of the key pieces of this approach is that patience is key. Youth who have been traumatized are often in that survival mode, which means they're thinking and focused about their safety, and their responses can sometimes be automatic and defensive. And so when that survival mode takes over, they will have difficulty talking about, thinking about, or planning for their education or their future. And this trauma-informed approach includes acknowledging the trauma the youth have experienced and remembering what brought them into the system and what events may have occurred that are leading to the behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs of that child. We'll remember that kind of iceberg graphic from the few slides before. Again, we've talked about this in previous slides, but one of the important things is to not label youth as not college material. So even if they are not doing well in school currently, it's really important to continue to motivate and instill hope. And so we'll talk more about why this matters in a couple other slides. But caregivers can continue to encourage a growth mindset. So this has to do with a child's self-concept. So as opposed to a growth mindset, a fixed mindset, people believe their qualities are fixed traits and can't change. So these people document their intelligence and talents rather than work to develop and improve them. So they believe that talent alone leads to success and no effort is required to get there. They also believe that you're either smart or you're not. So if a young person with low self-concept does poorly on a math test, they may think that they are inherently stupid or that they're bad at math. However, we want to encourage a growth mindset in our youth. So people who have this growth mindset have an underlying belief that their learning and intelligence grows with time and experience. So people believe they can get smarter and realize that their effort has an impact on their success. So they can put in the extra time, the practice that leads them to that higher achievement. So in this scenario, a youth who does poorly on their math test may think instead, if I study, I can do better. So this is a great time to emphasize that students are not alone in their learning. They can have support through tutoring or other academic supports to help students bridge those learning gaps and kind of continue growing those skills for education. So continuing to talk about that growth mindset, one of the things that caregivers can do is to support and reward efforts and actions instead of telling students in general that they're just smart. So some of the ways that they can do this is to help reframe perceptions of their academic abilities. So we know with foster youth, their education journey can be interrupted by events that are outside of their control, but they're also expected then to catch up quickly. But we know that in most cases, it takes time and practice to learn a new skill or concept. So we want to encourage patience with learning. Academics may not come naturally to all youth. However, like any new concept or skill, we have to have patience with ourselves as we learn. And in some cases, as we mentioned in the previous slide, it may also mean seeking out those additional resources like tutoring to assist with the learning. And we want to encourage youth to understand that it's okay to ask for help and that there's a lot to gain from resources and supports if they need them. Caregivers can also help reflect back to the youth their strengths and positive traits that, as a caregiver, they have observed. So some youth may be more inclined to see their flaws and dismiss their strengths. For example, in that young man that we talked about earlier who did poorly on his math test and thinks he's stupid, his caregiver could identify areas where he excels, like drawing or video games. And both of these skills, or both of these strengths, require logic and skills, which are the same skills that are used in math. They're just applied in a different way. So, like as a caregiver, they can encourage this youth that if he can master art and video games with time, he'll likely get a better understanding of math too. So it's important to be aware of what it sounds like when a student may be holding that fixed mindset, like in our example of the young person at the math test. And it's equally important to know how to respond to help the student to begin shifting towards a growth mindset. So we have some examples up on the slide that you can walk through with their caregiver. There are also more examples available in the Foster Youth Post-Secondary Educational Guide that you can direct caregivers to reference. But just one example of a growth mindset is that when a caregiver hears a youth saying something like, "I'm not smart enough to do this," the student reflects a belief that their abilities may be limited and unable to learn the concepts being taught. So a caregiver can reframe this statement and this situation with a growth mindset perspective, and by responding and saying, being smart doesn't mean learning comes easy to you or you can do things by yourself all the time. Being smart means you use the tools and resources available to you for learning, and that may mean asking for help sometimes. So this is a statement like this can help students, again, look at a different perspective of what it means to be smart and helps them reframe asking for help as a strength rather than a weakness. And you can see we also have additional examples that you're welcome to go through with the caregivers in your during your training. So, as caregivers, building a positive relationship with youth is often the most effective tool in your toolbox. So, it's important to think about how caregivers engage with foster youth in order to build rapport. So, one of the ways that we recommend you do this is using PACE, which is an acronym, and we'll go through each of the letters there. So, P is for playfulness, which is they're willing to laugh and joke and play even in difficult situations with youth. So it pulls that young person out of their flight or fight mode. And it's about helping a youth or child to be more open and experience what is positive in their life one step at a time. And then we have acceptance, for unconditional acceptance, and that builds safety and connection with young people. So accepting doesn't mean that you're agreeing or supporting the youth in all that they do, but it's just recognizing reality when it's present and actively communicating that when you accept the wishes, feelings, thoughts, and perceptions that are underneath the outward behavior of the young person that that's in your care. Curiosity without judgment is the hallmark of social engagement. So it's about wondering about the meaning behind the behavior for the child. So with curiosity, adults can convey their intention to simply understand why and to help a child with understanding. So asking questions like, what do you think was going on? Or what do you think that was about? So you can help ask these questions without necessarily anticipating an answer or response from youth. And finally, we have empathy, which is the experience of being understood. So it fuels connection and creates a context of safety and understanding. So it lets the child feel that adult's compassion for them, and and that when they're feeling sad or in distress, they're feeling less alone, knowing that they have an adult by their side. So in addition to utilizing those trauma-informed parenting approaches and the peace attitude and the growth mindset, there are many other ways that caregivers can create a college-going culture in the home. So whether or not a caregiver has experienced post-secondary education themselves, they can still be a motivating force for youth to achieve their dreams of obtaining education or training beyond high school. So this includes sharing a positive attitude towards post-secondary education, engaging in activities around the home that encourages learning, helping achieve success in their schoolwork, and involving college in their lives. So we'll talk more about what that might be. So one of the first things we had talked about is in creating a college-going culture is to encourage and motivate a young person. So what you say, what a caregiver says to a youth matters more than you might think. So, assuming that a youth can't go to college may have a significant negative outcome, whereas believing in a youth's ability to be successful, regardless of their past and even their current kind of educational outcomes, can be a strong motivator. So when caregivers have positive expectations for their youth, it can have a positive influence. This is called an expectancy advantage. And we saw this in a famous study, the famous Oak School experiment, where at the beginning of this experiment, teachers were led to believe that totally randomly selected students were showing signs of a spurt in intellectual growth and development. And at the end of the year, in line with the teacher's expectations, the identified students, again, who had been picked completely at random, showed significantly greater intellectual growth than compared to their peers. So it's important too to balance those expectations with support. So we talked about how important it is for students and youth to understand that it's okay to ask for help. So when students are experiencing difficulty, we can connect them again to tutoring, mentors, or other support services that can help them rise to those expectations without feeling so overwhelmed. It's also, again, really just important to give encouragement for youth to attend college and post-secondary pathways. So caregivers can consistently express the expectation that students will graduate from high school and go on to college. So they can do this by saying when you go to college or where you go to college instead of if you go to college. And we've seen with foster youth that those who received a lot of encouragement from adults in their life were more likely to pursue post-secondary education opportunities than those youth who did not receive as much encouragement. So again, a reminder, It's very easy to send those encouraging messages early and often and help a youth develop a college-going culture at home. In addition to motivating and encouraging youth, we also want to build knowledge and awareness about college for young people. There are a number of things that caregivers can do to help build this awareness. They can expose college to a youth by going on a campus tour with them. So this is a great activity to do together and helps the students get familiar with college campus. You can do these tours now virtually or in person, which makes it very easy for youth to get familiar with their local college campuses. Another creative way to expose youth to college is to bring them to events that are hosted on college campuses, such as like a sporting event or a performing arts event or some other activity where a youth can walk around that college at campus and experience what it's like to be there. You can also connect youth to foster care alumni who are enrolled in college. And one way to do this is by connecting with your local college and their foster youth campus support programs. And we'll talk about these support programs a little bit later and how to get in touch with them to do this. You can also have kind of discussions with your young person about how college is different than high school. So this can be particularly important for youth who are not liking high school and not necessarily understanding how college might offer them a little bit more freedom in terms of flexible schedules and coursework that's focused on their own interests. We can also talk a lot about or talk with youth about the information we presented in the earlier slides about how post-secondary education can lead to better financial outcomes in the future. And for some youth, that can be a motivator to continue to do well in high school and go on. Caregivers can also talk to youth about the other non-academic benefits of higher education. So the different career options, the higher unemployment rates, those opportunities to develop new skills like critical thinking, and even the kind of social components of college, like meeting new friends, developing connections, and having fun on campus. And finally, it's just as important to hold youth accountable to those agreed upon expectations. So we want caregivers to continue to check in with their young person about school and their grades, and look after their homework completion and the tasks that they have to do for school. And so one of the ways that caregivers can do this effectively is to use open-ended questions. So instead of asking, how was school? Ask specifics like, what did you learn in class today? Or how do you feel about the math exam? And caregivers may also kind of display positive grades like on the refrigerator at home, or use a incentive or reward system that is directly related to educational goals. The reward or incentive may be for positive performance or improvement, academically or behaviorally, but it connects back to that growth mindset. So we want to, again, encourage youth that they can continue to grow and learn from any kind of challenges that they're having in school currently. So in this video, we will hear from youth about kind of what motivated them to attend college and what helped them to overcome obstacles. So this is, again, an opportunity to hear directly from young people. All right, and to just summarize what all that we just discussed and those key strategies that caregivers can use to support youth, we want to use that trauma-informed parenting approach, remembering all of those kind of underlying needs that youth have and that their behaviors are kind of manifested of that of those needs. We want to encourage that growth mindset and remind youth that they can continue to grow from their challenges. Using that PACE attitude when engaging with youth. And again, that's playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. And then we talked a lot about creating a college-going culture at home by encouraging caregivers to just motivate their youth and talk about post-secondary options as a real path forward for young people, building their college knowledge, and then helping keep youth accountable for all of their schoolwork and post-secondary steps. So again, we have an interaction opportunity built into this slide. So your caregivers may have tried this already. They may have other ideas about things that they've implemented with their own youth, and this can be a great discussion or an opportunity for caregivers to learn from each other about what may work for other youth. All right, so this is about halfway through the presentation, and this is a break, and we do have it in the trainer's guide that you can have a 10-minute break here, or depending on your audience, you can have for 2 5-minute breaks, just depending on your time and how you're structuring your training.
Thank you, Megan. So now we're going to talk about all the different post-secondary pathways that are out there. And when we hear the term college, it can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. And I think the common college experience that we usually see in the media, it's that of that first-time college freshman enrolling directly at a four-year university, living on campus in the dorms. But in fact, there's a lot of different pathways out there. And so we want to make sure that foster youth are empowered with this information about all these various paths so that they can make the choice that's the best fit for them. So here's an overview of the various post-secondary education pathways, and this information is also in the post-secondary educational planning guide. So of course, one pathway, it's that of a student with a high school diploma. They're going directly into a four-year college or university. That might be a public four-year university. So here in California, we have our University of California system, the UCs, or the Cal State University system, the CSUs. But that could be an in-state or it could be an out-of-state college. It could be a private college or university. So that might be here in California, the University of Southern California, USC, or maybe Howard University, out of state. But another pathway could be a student who's going into community college, sometimes referred to as junior college. And they can do that with either a high school diploma or even an equivalent like a GED. And community colleges now, they offer so many different varieties of post-secondary programs from career education, which we'll talk more about. So maybe someone wants to be a dental hygienist, veterinary technician, as well as different majors and degrees for transfer to a four-year university. Now, while there's career technical programs at the community colleges, there's also other options for career technical programs through adult education, Job Corps, and even apprenticeships. And we're going to talk about all those different options in a moment. So there are some differences between the different systems and options, whether someone's going to a UC or a Cal State University, a private university, an out-of-state university, or a California community college. And so this slide is broken into three components. We show one at a time, and you as the facilitator can do it a few different ways. Like before you show the content, you can kind of poll your audience and see what they already know. Like, what do you think the differences are between these different colleges and universities? Just to get them a little more engaged and get a finger on the pulse of how much your audience already knows. But the first section is looking at admissions requirements. And each type of pathway has different admissions requirements. room and board options, which we'll talk about on the next slide, as well as degrees offered, which we'll also talk about on the third slide. And so it's important that you connect your student's academic counselor, connect with that academic counselor so that your student is enrolled in the right courses depending on what post-secondary journey they're interested in. So what does that mean? So for those interested in doing a public four-year university, and also it's also the case for most private colleges, these pathways have selective admissions processes. So they're typically going to require students to complete what's called A through G courses in high school. We're going to talk more about what that means, but these are particular courses in high school that are required for these universities. And it's not just that they're taking these courses, they also have to pass these courses with a grade of C or better. And that's usually the minimum standard for getting into these more competitive colleges and universities. Another factor is around the SAT and ACT. So these are no longer required. These exams, these standardized exams, are no longer required for the UCs or the CSU systems. However, some private and out-of-state universities may still require this exam. So if a student is interested in that pathway, then they'll want to take practice exams, the practice SAT, starting as early as 10th grade, which we'll talk more about as well. Also to keep in mind for those who are thinking about going out of state or to a private college university, they may also require 2 or more letters of recommendation as part of the admissions process. Now, on the other hand, community colleges, there's typically no minimum GPA requirement, no qualifying admissions tests or essays. And that's why they're usually referred to as open access institutions. Now, community colleges actually don't require the student to have a diploma or an equivalency to register and enroll in the classes. However, we strongly recommend that a student still gets a high school diploma or equivalency. Again, that's like a GED test, as it is required for most federal and state financial aid programs. So they would miss out on a lot of money without that high school diploma or equivalent. So here's an overview of the different room and board options depending on which pathway a student takes. Now, for public four-year universities, and in most cases, private colleges, they typically offer on-campus housing. That's different than our community colleges, which generally speaking don't have housing available except for a small number of campuses here and there. Also to know, current and former foster youth, if they were in care at some point after the age of 13, they actually have access to priority housing within the UC and the CSU systems here in California. So it's a benefit for our youth. Now, students who receive campus housing, they'll also be asked to select a meal plan so they can enjoy the on-campus dining and eat their meals on campus. Students can choose the meal plan that best fits their budget and whatever their dietary needs are. That's different, though, than at the community colleges. A lot of community colleges, but not all, may have some on-campus restaurants or maybe some campus food vendors, but they don't provide a meal plan for students. That's something they have to budget on their own with their own money. What we have here is an overview of what the different degrees are that these different pathways offer. So for those who are interested in going to a four-year institution, like the UCs or the CSUs or private colleges or universities, these pathways offer what's called a bachelor degree or a BA, and this can be across all different kinds of fields. So there's liberal arts, that's things like English, history, language, social sciences like psychology or sociology. They also have pathways in science and technology. Someone that maybe wants to major in chemistry or engineering. And of course, there's a lot more. Those are just some examples. But these universities, these four-year universities, they'll also have a lot of advanced degree programs. So if someone wants to go even beyond getting their bachelor's, they can get a master's, maybe a master's in business, a master's in social work. And they often also offer doctoral programs where someone can get a PhD. Now, community colleges, they offer different options and different pathways. They provide students access to career education programs that offer certificates, as well as associate degrees. And if someone gets an associate degree, they can use that to complete and then transfer ultimately to a new college or university to work on their bachelor's degrees. Which also is great about the community colleges is they actually all have transfer agreements here in California with our CSUs and UCs, as well as many historically Black colleges and universities, also known as HBCUs. So a student can really begin their post-secondary journey at their local community college and ultimately transfer anywhere depending on what their ultimate educational and career goals are. Now, there are some community colleges that recently have been approved by the state to offer bachelor's degree. That's not very common. They're really just programs that are in an area of study that's not available within the CSU or UC system. So we have a link on the slide if anyone wants to check out what those lists of bachelor degree programs are at the community colleges. For example, Cypress College has mortuary science, Skyline College has respiratory care, so there's a few options out there. Now, we wanted to spend a little bit more time on career and technical education as it's the lesser known pathway. And students who are interested in this pathway actually have a lot of options available to them. And so it's important to really take time to sit down and explore each one to see which one best meets the student's needs and helps them towards their long-term career goals. So career and technical education, sometimes known as CTE, students could get training in a range of fields. You know, maybe someone wants to become a website developer or a dental hygienist, a construction site inspector. The different programs that are offered vary campus to campus at the community colleges, but these programs are typically shorter term programs, sometimes 12 to 18 months, and they lead to the student ultimately getting a certificate. And a lot of these offer jobs with good salaries in high demand fields that have a lot of growth opportunities. For example, someone could go to LA Trade Tech, get a certificate in plumbing and make $60,000. And they provide really high quality, targeted career focused training with the goal of preparing those students to enter directly into the workplace. The other good thing to know is that there's a lot of financial aid available for students doing these CTE programs. And keep in mind, you know, most current and former foster youth qualify for free tuition at our California community colleges due to being low income. And many will qualify for about $30,000 in free state and federal grant aid. Grant aid being free money that they don't have to pay back, they can use to cover not just the cost of classes, but other living expenses. So a lot of resources to support this pathway as well. Next slide. Now, in addition to the career and technical education programs at our community colleges, there are a few other options students can explore as well. So there's also programs available through adult education programs and Job Corps. And adult education programs, they again have a range of different career and technical education programs that they offer, and it can vary district to district. They also offer financial aid to help cover expenses of these programs. The programs could be very similar to those offered through the community college, but units completed through these programs will not transfer towards a college degree, whereas at a community college, many times those programs can count towards transferring towards a college degree. And I will say too that the financial aid that is available is often not as robust as the financial aid that's available for the CET programs at the community colleges. Job Corps is a free residential education and job training program, and it's administered actually by the U.S. Department of Labor. So students could get the free housing, receive basic living allowance alongside the career education program that they're doing. And so they can learn career skills, again, all kinds of fields from construction to water management, while also giving them life skills in a supportive living environment. Job Corps does not require any minimum GPA or a high school diploma. And because it's a federally administered program, there are, though, eligibility requirements around age, income, and citizenship. Another pathway is military service. So some students, they may be interested in enlisting in a branch of the military, which can also give access to housing resources and a basic living allowance, along with educational benefits for those who also want to pursue higher education. But we want to remind students that the military, it's a full-time job, and while it can include an educational component, it's a multi-year commitment. So in the trainer's notes, we also have links to a lot of these resources that you can put into the chat function for anyone that wants to look more into these different pathways. And this information is also in the post-secondary educational planning guide. So apprenticeship programs, this is another pathway for students to access post-secondary opportunities. And they'll prepare students to enter skilled positions across all different types of fields. And most individuals who complete an apprenticeship program retain employment after their apprenticeship ends. The average income for this pathway is about $50,000. And so they can actually start beginning to earn and get paid while they're getting work experience to develop their skills. Now, the educational and eligibility requirements can vary program to program. So some of these programs prefer applicants with a high school diploma or equivalent, and then some require that they have to take some type of aptitude test or other type of test. So there can be a range, and some being more rigorous with their requirements than others. But again, if you want to learn more information, we've got the link on the slide, and we can put that into the chat as well. So as a warning, these days, all schools promote themselves on the internet. So sometimes it can be hard to determine which of these programs are legitimate, which ones aren't. And so it's important to make sure that any educational institution that your student is interested in, that it's accredited. So they'll be able to get financial aid, and that there's solid proof that graduates receive certification in their trade, and that the school offers support for job placement that also has a good success rate. So we really don't want students going to any types of programs or colleges that are not accredited. They end up being a waste of the students' time and of their money. For-profit schools, they end up costing a lot more than public schools. And so students that go into these for-profit proprietary schools, they often struggle to repay the cost of that tuition. They end up in higher debt, and it doesn't necessarily lead to favorable employment outcomes. And oftentimes units at these schools rarely transfer. So, you may have heard back in the news a long time ago, there was ITT Tech that was shut down after multiple lawsuits alleging fraud. These proprietary schools, sometimes they employ pretty aggressive recruiting and marketing strategies to attract students. So as caregivers, it's important that you support your youth in really researching the programs that they're interested in and making sure that youth are aware of all of their options before enrolling, essentially to prevent them ending up in unnecessary debt with these more expensive programs, and reminding them that the community colleges, again, offer a wide range of these vocational or CTE programs that are usually free or low cost to youth in foster care. So now that you're familiar with the different college pathways, the question is, how can caregivers help youth determine which pathway is best for them? And it really varies. It can depend on the youth's educational goals, what are their career interests, what are their learning styles, what are their preferences. And again, no one pathway is inherently better than the other. So, ideally, it's not always possible, but ideally you want to help the youth first think about what's their career interest, then find what's the appropriate major or certificate to match that interest, and then help them determine which institutions, which is another name for colleges or universities, offer those programs. Keep in mind, though, that while that's ideal, it's not always a linear path, and it's really an ongoing conversation that caregivers are going to want to start early with youth and regularly revisit as their interests and their goals. They're probably going to change over time from when they're 13 to when they're 15 to when they're 18. So keep that conversation going. So when caregivers begin with first exploring a youth's interest as starting the conversation there, it's going to help to increase that youth's motivation and provide meaning for them to want to stay engaged in school. And when we start with their interests and what motivates them, it can also help to decrease the chances of them choosing the wrong degree path, which if they go in the wrong degree path, then that can lead to them spending unnecessary time, wasting their money in a pathway that's not the right fit for them. So taking an interest in your youth, listening to their interests, it also helps the youth feel like they matter and that they're valued when we're asking them, what are you interested in? What are your goals? What are your dreams? For youth at this age, they're still learning about themselves, going through that process of self-discovery. And so by helping a youth better understand their strengths and their interests, you can also help build connections to careers that then match those strengths and those interests that they have. Now, it may be difficult for a youth to know what career they may be interested in and exploring. So there are other ways that you can engage youth in career exploration. It may not always be asking them, hey, what's your dream job? Conversation starters like some of the ones we have on the slide can also be a great place to start. And we have these and others in the post-secondary educational planning guide as well. So you might want to say, do you find it easy or difficult to think about yourself in the future? What might make it easier? What are some of your talents, your skills, your strengths? What's one thing that makes you excited about your future or makes you worry about your future? Questions like this to help elicit a conversation. Now, in addition to this, there's a lot of great tools and resources out there available to caregivers to help engage with youth on these conversations, and a lot of online tools and activities to help youth find ultimately a meaningful career. Some that we have listed on the slide here from the LA Opportunity Youth Collaborative, they've got some great resources, youth career guides, caregiver companion guides with tools about how to engage youth in these conversations. And then the websites here that we have on the slide too are great for helping youth take career assessments, interest exams, things like that to see their strengths and interests as well. So when we're engaging youth around conversations of career exploration, there's a few things to keep in mind. One is, what are the earnings that they can make for this career path versus what kind of lifestyle does the youth want to live? What's the cost of living in their community? How much money do they need to make to live the life that they want? They'll also want to think about what are the educational requirements required for the career path that they're thinking about, and what are the costs of the different programs and pathways that are out there? And then what's the projected industry growth? What are the job opportunities and prospects like in that field? So some of these tools that we have on the website can help youth understand the cost of living in their community, and again, how much money they're going to need to make, and thinking about their budget, what kind of life they want to make. Do you want to get your nails done? Is that a need or a want as they think about their budget and things of that nature? They can also help expose youth to new possibilities by taking these different skills and exams on these websites. For many youth, they may not even know about all the different jobs that are out there. Maybe the only careers that they've been exposed to are social workers, teachers, police officers. So this can help them think about different opportunities that they maybe have never even heard about before. So some of these tools, there's the living wage calculator, and that identifies the cost of living in your particular city. There's a budget tool on California Career Zone, and that can help you engage in a meaningful conversation with youth about their basic needs. Again, help them determine the type of jobs or careers they would need to afford the lifestyle that they want. and then kind of backwards plan to determine the type of education that they need to reach that goal. And then lastly, another tool we have on there is Salary Surfer, and that can show real earnings of different pathways at the California Community College and show and also help them learn about all the different pathways that are available to them at the California Community College system. And as a training opportunity, you can take about 10 minutes to have the caregivers explore these different websites, and that can help them get more familiar with it and be better prepared. So if they're talking to youth about these websites, then they've already kind of looked at it, played around with it. And if you're doing this training in person, they could, pair up, get on their smartphone, pick a website and explore it with their partner and practice some of these types of questions. Or if you're doing this via Zoom, again, you could put someone into breakout rooms, maybe depending on the size of your group, breakout rooms of 2 people. Again, someone could pick a website, they could share their screen, they can even pretend that they're the caregiver, and the other person could pretend that they're the youth, kind of looking at the website together and helping them explore it. So in addition to career exploration websites and tools, here's some tips of other ways that you can kind of navigate this conversation about reality testing with youth. One thing you can do as a caregiver is you can use storytelling or just personal anecdotes about your own job or career experience. I think most of us as adults probably started off in customer service. I know one of my first jobs was at Big Five Sporting Goods. And most of us don't just land in the jobs that we have now. We've actually worked through a career path to get where we are today. And so, you can use this as a learning opportunity to teach youth that these customer service jobs, they can teach us skills that can ultimately be translatable to help us be successful in our careers. So for example, maybe you got fired from your first job. You didn't realize that being 10 minutes late was a big deal. You were late multiple times. Many youth may be surprised to learn that. Oh, okay. Didn't realize this is important for being on time and developing these skills for a job. So these conversations can really be key to help normalize these experiences for youth as well. Another tip is, when possible, just try to stick to the facts instead of perceptions and use this as an opportunity to provide youth with information about things like the cost of living, higher education, about job opportunities to help inform them, but not dictate their decision making. Just saying, well, because I told you so, this is the right choice, doesn't usually go that well, with a teenager. We want to give them information to help them in informing their own personal decision-making process. So lastly, another strategy is just to ask youth questions instead of giving them advice. What if you give them advice that doesn't work out well for them? Asking youth questions about what they want to do and helping them decide the right decisions for them. And this kind of goes back to that PACE model we learned about and referring back to the PACE attitude to help them make those decisions and using empathy and using curiosity to support them through this process and deciding which pathway is right for them. Another role that caregivers can play is assisting youth in goal setting. So this should include both long-term and short-term goals. Now, long-term goals doesn't need to be where they see themselves in 10 years. For some youth, that's too far in the future. A long-term goal could be something that they hope to achieve maybe just throughout that school year. And a short-term goal can be focused on the day ahead or the week ahead. And their goals can be related to other things beyond their education that might impact their long-term career goals. So maybe they want to participate in therapy to work on their mental health, or they want to practice soccer every day so that they can make the high school team. I think what's important to send as a message to young people is that it's natural and normal to expect bumps and challenges along the way. And so this can be an opportunity to explore with youth what will motivate them, what will help them keep going, even when times may be tough. So you might say, okay, what are things that I can do to help you stay motivated if there's bumps along the way, to kind of anticipate potential challenges that may come up. And then lastly, help the youth identify supports at each stage in the process. Because when youth are in fight or flight mode due to trauma they have experienced, they may have a hard time remembering who to ask for help and putting a plan in place with the youth to help prepare and anticipate those moments. So now we're going to transition into talking about educational planning milestones. And we just talked about, there's many different pathways to higher education. Someone could go into career technical education, an associate's degree, or a bachelor's degree. But which type of higher education is right for your youth? It's not only going to depend on their interests and goals, but it's also going to depend on the educational path that they take in middle school and high school. So depending on the path that the youth chooses, there's a few different educational planning milestones for each grade that are necessary along the way so that they can be prepared to reach whatever educational goal that they have post high school. So before we dive into all the different steps to prepare youth for post-secondary education, we just want to keep in mind that for a lot of children who have been in foster care, oftentimes their developmental or their emotional age isn't necessarily the same as their chronological age or even their grade level. So while we're going to talk about different steps for each grade, sometimes these steps need to be adjusted depending on where the youth is at. So caregivers, we just encourage them to meet youth where they're at and know that some kids may need more guided support to meet their goals or might need more time to get there, and that's okay. So let's start with middle school and some of the key steps in grades 6 through 8. The goal for middle school is that by the end of middle school, youth will have developed sort of foundational skills like time management, study habits, maintaining regular attendance, test taking skills, skills that are going to help them succeed in high school. There's more information about this in the post-secondary educational guide as well, but we're just providing a high-level overview right now. But to achieve this goal in middle school, it's really critical that youth feel comfortable at school. And caregivers can help their youth achieve this by, regularly attending meetings with school counselors to stay connected to their child's progress. Middle school is also a great time for youth to do early career exploration. And again, there's a lot of different options for exploring careers depending on the emotional age and the interests of the youth that you're working with. But this could look like participating in extracurriculars. Maybe a youth wants to take elective classes, or maybe there are some career awareness activities happening at the school, like job shadowing or career fairs. And as we talked about earlier, maybe that's a caregiver sitting down with the youth, visiting some educational websites to help them explore their interests or explore careers around those interests. A lot of middle schools may have educational planning nights, so we definitely encourage caregivers to attend that with the youth. Sometimes local high schools will present about their programs to the middle schools. That's another great opportunity to get involved. Middle school is also a great time to start keeping a binder for the youth. So have one place where they keep all the information related to post-secondary ed. So if there's any copies of test scores or grades or extracurricular activities that they do, any login names or passwords that they develop for any websites as well. Now in ninth grade, you're really building upon those middle school foundations once in high school. And all of the content in yellow, those are new milestones for ninth grade. So in ninth grade, it's particularly important to, again, meet with their school counselor, ideally every semester, to not only make sure that they're on track to graduate high school, but to also make sure that they're in the right courses depending on their college and career interests. Another benefit of doing this is that a lot of times counselors and teachers, they may not be aware of the impact on trauma on the youth, and a caregiver can show up in those meetings to advocate for their youth and their potential. By attending these meetings as well with youth as the caregiver, I think it also demonstrates to the youth and the counselor that the caregiver cares, and showing that they care can encourage youth to stay on track to graduate. So as we mentioned, one of the things is making sure that they're enrolled in the right courses depending on their career and educational goals. So what are A through G courses? The CSUs and UCs require these college prep courses, referred to as A through G courses, for admission into their programs. And as we talked about on some of the other slides, some private colleges and universities also require completion of these A through G courses. So there's specific requirements for each subject in math, English, history, and science. And we have an overview of this in the educational planning guide as well to see what the requirements are, how many classes they need in each of these categories and which classes. So if someone's interested in going directly into a 4-year college or university after high school, they're going to need to be enrolled in these classes and passing these classes with a C or better. So it's not just making sure that, great, the students enrolled in high school, they're showing up to class. It's also making sure they're enrolled in the right courses if they want to have that 4-year college pathway as an option. And that critical step starts in 9th grade. Another great activity is going on college tours. I mean, this can start in middle school, it can start in 9th grade. It's ideal if students have multiple opportunities to go on multiple college tours or college fairs. A lot of times high schools put on these tours, but there could also be in your local community foster youth specific college tours, sometimes being hosted by local nonprofits or through your independent living program, which we'll talk more about. And lastly, many high schools may offer academic enrichment programs, and students should definitely be encouraged to participate in these programs. These are considered programs that are, productive experiences beyond your traditional school curriculum that encourage academic performance or encourage college attendance. So there's all kinds of different programs out there. Some are offered during the school year, some are offered during the summer. And, it's a great activity for a caregiver to do with the youth is to help them find a program that's in line with their interests and their goals. Talking to the student's academic counselor is also a great place to start to find out about local communities, programs available in their local community. And for our folks in LA, we also have a handout that has an overview about some of these foster youth specific programs that are here in LA County. And that's a handout that's in the caregiver materials. And again, other counties, it varies county to county, but there are some other programs that are foster youth specific in some other regions beyond LA as well. So in 10th grade, students should really continue to maintain those foundational skills we talked about in middle school, and of course, continue those key steps in 9th grade, which includes that ongoing enrollment in A through G courses, visiting college campuses, and enrolling in academic enrichment programs. But another thing to consider in the 10th grade is students may also be interested in what's called concurrent or dual enrollment courses. And these are courses that count for both high school and college credit. A lot of times they can be offered at the local community college or even directly on a high school campus. So they can be at their high school taking college level courses. And they're a great way for students to get early exposure to the college environment. They've actually been proven to help increase high school graduation and college enrollment and completion rates for students, particularly for low-income students, students of color, and even those with lower GPAs. They often offer a lot of other supports and resources, enrichment activities, academic support, textbook loan assistance. But I think a lot of times with these types of college courses, they think, oh, this is just for our high school students that, have a high GPA, or those are for our students in the honors classes. But actually, dual enrollment, it's really open to anyone. And sometimes our students who are struggling the most in their high school classes might actually be more engaged taking a college level class that speaks to their interests. It can also just give them a head start on college because if they complete this class, they get college credit and it can count towards their associate's degree or even their bachelor's degree too. So in addition to the career exploration activities that we talked about in middle school and high school, summer is also a great opportunity starting in 10th grade to think about a summer job or an internship. And they can help a youth get, workforce readiness skills, help them explore career interests, figure out their strengths. And this is the role that a caregiver can play in helping the youth find those job opportunities and ideally starting the process early before summer starts. Lastly, if you have any 10th graders that are interested in attending a four-year university, they may want to consider taking practice college entrance exams. Those are known as the PSAT or the practice SAT. There's fee waivers that are available for youth in care that they can get through their high school counselors. They don't have to pay for these exams. They don't have to take them in 10th grade. They can also take them in 11th grade. The more practice, the better. But, these exams, as we mentioned, they're no longer required by the UCs or the CSUs. But if someone is maybe considering that they might want to go to a private college or they might want to go out of state, there are still some colleges and universities who still require those exams. So although students pursuing higher education won't need to apply for financial aid until their senior year, 10th grade is a good time to start becoming familiar with the financial aid process. And it doesn't have to be intimidating or confusing. We have a lot of resources out there for young people and adults, one of them being the Financial Aid Guide for California foster and unaccompanied homeless youth. And it's a really comprehensive guide. It has an overview of all the different types of financial aid, step-by-step information on how to fill out these financial aid application, tips on what to do after a student applies for financial aid to make sure they get that maximum aid award. And it explains how to stay in good standing once they get financial aid, how to keep that financial aid. So again, they don't need to start applying or thinking about this in the 10th grade, but this is a good resource to give to students and caregivers to start familiarizing yourself with this information. So we've also included that in the caregiver materials section. And there's also a lot of great information in there on scholarship resources as well. So before I move on, we do have another youth video for youth talking about what skills were helpful to them to help them succeed in higher education. And many of them actually had tips for caregivers that you can hear in this video as well. So we'll take a moment. We're not going to show it again right now, but we'll take a moment to hear from youth about their experience.
So in this next section, we'll talk about what help is available for caregivers. We know that planning and preparing for college can be complicated even for the most organized of us. But the good news is that there are so many resources and supports out there to assist caregivers and youth throughout this process. And those are available at the school district and child welfare. And we already saw a few of the JBAE related resources that are available to you. So again, keeping that foster youth post-secondary education guide in your mind as you go through this is a good thing to do. So first, we'll talk a little bit about the resources that are available at the K through 12 level. Every youth will have an academic counselor who can assist to make sure that that student is taking the right courses to reach their goal and is on track to graduate. They can also assist a foster youth to obtain a fee waiver for placement exams and connect the youth to other resources such as academic enrichment programs or tutoring available through the district. The Foster Youth District Liaison, also known as the AB 490 Liaison, can also be found at every district. They can help collect transcripts from different schools, assist students to obtain partial credits to stay on track for graduation, identify tutoring resources at the district and in the community, and assist with determinations for AB 167 or 216, which are special graduation exception requirements for foster youth. And there is a link on the slide here that you can click on, and it will give the district liaison information for your particular district. Lastly, another great resource is the County Office of Education Foster Youth Services Coordinating Program. The link to locate information on your county's program can also be found on the slide. And some of the services that these folks can provide include technical assistance to the districts, professional development training for school districts, and as well as child welfare, probation, and caregivers. They can also assist with tutoring needs and educational case management and transition to college and career services. These counselors may also be able to assist by attending team meetings and advocating for students upon request. And again, there's a link in this slide that you're able to update this, this particular slide with the contact information for your local County Office of Education folks. There's also the ILP program, the Independent Living Program, which is a voluntary program offered through child welfare and probation. It provides services and funding to help youth and young adults gain the skills necessary to live independently. So youth who are placed or were placed in foster care and out-of-home care or KINGAP at any age between the ages of 16 to 18 can request an ILP transition coordinator to assist the youth until they're 21. Determining eligibility for this program can sometimes be complicated, so please refer any eligibility questions to your county's ILP transition coordinator. And we have a link on the slide as well that is you're able to see who your county ILP coordinator is and update this slide appropriately. So while this training is focused on caregivers and how they can support youth on their higher education journey, we also know that there are many other folks involved in supporting a young person and that caregivers are part of a greater team. So the child and family team meetings can be used to make a plan to support foster youth in reaching their college and career goals and get connected to the appropriate supports and resources. These CFT meetings don't always have to be focused on a crisis or an immediate need, but they can also be requested to proactively discuss a youth's education plans, their current academic performance, and progress towards their long-term goals and overall well-being. So discussing the youth's interests, their goals, and their strengths, particularly around education, can be great topics to explore at a CFT meeting. So in addition, it's encouraged that education partners are invited to attend the CFT meeting, and it can even be hosted at a school site to accommodate school staff like a teacher or a counselor if the youth feels comfortable with that. Finally, I'll point to a resource, the californiacollegepathways.org. This is a great website that includes a range of resources and information for foster youth and adult supporters around higher education, including much of the information that we've talked about in this presentation today. It also includes a search tool to find campus-based support programs at California's college and universities and their staff's contact information. So one of the ways that we had talked about in creating a college-going culture at home was to connect youth to these support programs on campus, and this is an easy way to find the right folks to be able to do that. In the beginning of the training, we asked caregivers to reflect on any concerns or fears that they may have about their youth attending college. And just like caregivers, youth may have their own fears or concerns about attending college. But the good news is that there are a lot of resources and supports available to assist youth in their higher education journey. So regardless of their current academic performance, behaviors, grade, or income level, college is still possible for our youth. So in this next section, we'll go through some fiction. And again, this is a way to integrate some interactive opportunities for your audience. So first, fact or fiction. Foster youth qualify for a lot of financial aid to assist with the costs of college. And this is fact. Foster youth do qualify for a lot of financial aid to assist, and this aid is often gift aid, which means it doesn't need to be repaid and is based on the student's own finances. And some of this financial aid is specifically just for foster youth. So while other students have to provide their parents' income, foster youth are considered independent and don't have to report parents or caregivers' income if they were in out-of-home care at least one day after the age of 13. This also includes youth who have legal guardianship. Most foster youth even qualify for a fee waiver and can attend community college for free. And as mentioned in one of the previous slides, the ILP program or the Independent Living Program also has additional financial resources to assist with the costs of post-secondary education. And again, we can learn more about all of the aid that's available and the process to apply in that financial aid guide for California foster and unaccompanied homeless youth that we referenced earlier. Fact or fiction, students with disabilities can go to college. And that is fact. All of California's public colleges and universities have disability services and supports for students, as do many of our private universities as well. Students can get special accommodations such as extended test taking time or assistance with note taking. And additionally, most colleges offer mental health resources for students as well. Fact or fiction? Most colleges offer support programs for foster youth, and that is fact. All colleges, all community colleges and public four-year colleges in California have designated support programs for foster youth. And some private colleges and universities do as well, such as USC. These support programs offer a range of supports from counseling, workshops, tutoring, and opportunities for students to build community with other foster youth on campus. The eligibility requirements and names of these programs vary depending on the campus, so you'll definitely want to do some research when you're looking at colleges for your youth to attend. You can also find more information about these programs in that post-secondary education guide or on that California College Pathways website we discussed earlier. Fact or fiction, students with a bad GPA can still go to college, and that is fact. So even if a student performs poorly in middle school or high school, they can still go to college. Remember that we discussed that community colleges don't have a minimum GPA requirement, so that's open access for everyone. Fact or fiction, foster youth can get priority registration for classes and priority access to on-campus housing. And that is a fact. So all UC and CSU campuses give foster youth priority access to on-campus housing, which is often impacted. These campuses also have priority placement for foster youth during school breaks, especially for those that have housing available. Financial aid can also be used for these housing costs, so something to keep in mind. Foster youth who have been in care on or after their 13th birthday qualify for priority registration at California community colleges, UC and CSU campuses until the age of 26. And so, as you can see, foster youth may qualify for a lot of benefits depending on their time in care. So, for caregivers who want to learn more about all of the different eligibility requirements, and to kind of inform their permanency planning for the youth, you can check out that benefits eligibility chart that's part of the handouts in our resources. And that document provides a brief overview of the various benefits and eligibility criteria and at what age a youth would be eligible for. So we've covered a lot of information in the course, and now would be a great time for caregivers to be able to practice and apply all of the information that they've learned. So this is, again, an interactive opportunity for your group, and it is 2 vignettes, and depending on how your presentation is structured, you can divide the group into multiple groups. You can have them do it independently. If you're on Zoom, you can do it in breakout groups or again one-on-one. There are 2 vignettes that are part of this training, and depending on how much time you've allocated for this interactive opportunity or the size of your group, you may only be able to do one, but 2 are available. And each vignette includes some discussion questions and helpful kind of guidance for each audience member to participate in. And for the facilitator, more information about these vignettes and responses to the vignettes can be found in the trainer's guide. And the link to these particular vignettes are on the website under those caregiver handouts section. And we'll kind of be starting to wrap up the training with another video that will hear from our youth about how they successfully transitioned into adulthood and what they think about their future, and be ending kind of on a hopeful note. And again, as we're wrapping up the training, we want our caregivers to reflect kind of on how they can play an active role in supporting their youth to college. So we know how important caregivers are in doing this. They can determine which college and career pathway is the best fit, creating that college-going culture in the home, and support them to complete the necessary planning milestones to succeed in college. So based on what they've learned in today's training, this is a great opportunity to ask them just one thing they'll do differently with their youth in the next 30 days to support them in achieving higher education. So again, depending on your format, you can have folks be typing in the chat or calling out. Or if you're in person, you can do something visual like a post-it collage to kind of bring the point home. And so wrapping up the end of the presentation, we did allocate 10 minutes for Q&A, and that can either be done here at the end or throughout the presentation. If you're doing it throughout the presentation, just make sure that you're keeping track of that time, but there's time here at the end as well to go over Q&A. So that wraps up this Train the Trainer video. If you're wanting to have more information about the training and the content, I definitely recommend that trainers review the trainer's guide for this education course part 1 and review the post-secondary education guide that's available on those handouts. Both those documents provide some more detailed information for you to be able to help navigate the content in this presentation.